Hey everybody, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars, and we got a great email from Steve B. Steve, send us an email with the phonetic spelling of your last name because I have no idea how to spell that. But anyway, Steve B gave us a great topic, which Chris and I have touched on before, but I think it's just ongoing for guitar players or musicians in general, which is what happens or what do you do when kind of you feel tired of your own playing or you feel like you're in a rut. Chris and I wanted to talk about that again, and we'll probably talk about it in the future because it's kind of an ongoing thing. Chris, what do you usually do when you feel like your playing's in a rut and you're not enjoying what you're hearing you play?
That happens a lot. I mean, this person posted on our Facebook page, and it was like right at the exact time that I was experiencing the same thing. It's changed for me over the years, and I think I'm better at it now. The number one thing for me now, when I get to that spot where I pick up the guitar and just feel stale, it's like I do the same thing. I don't like this. I put the guitar down. I mean, which I never used to do. I used to struggle with it before, and it was like kind of like just trying to push through and get something. And sometimes you just end up getting super frustrated. What I do now is I put the guitar down and I listen to music. It's like for the same amount of time that I play guitar, and I listen for things. I've changed over the years. I think the rut problem is probably different for so many different guitar players, depending on where you are in your guitar playing journey. But for me, it's changed from back in the days of like trying to play really hot, flashy solos and be so focused on that to just playing more varied guitar parts and knowing a little bit more about the way that the fretboard works, a little bit of like theory, big quotation marks. So that's changed for me. And what I find is if I'm really frustrated and nothing's coming out and I'll listen to a record, if you've been kind of working on your soloing and stuff, you'll just like, well, how does he handling this solo? Ignore the fucking solos. That's what I do now. Is like listen for the guitar parts that aren't in the solo. Like an example of just the other day, something for me is listen to like on Abbey Road, she came in through the bathroom window. Listen to the guitar. I think it's George Harrison around the vocals in that song. It's completely brilliant. And you're not sitting in front of your guitar and just think about things like, where's he putting it? Where's the vocal in relation to where he's putting that guitar? What's it, what's he playing? You don't need to know the exact notes he's playing, but what is he's playing like double stops or he's playing, thirds or whatever he's playing. It's like, and then it just kind of enters your brain. Maybe even if I've been frustrated and I put the guitar down and I'm listening to music, suddenly I'll get that spark. Like I got to touch my guitar right now. And I got to, if not figure out exactly what he's doing, I have to kind of do something along that context. And for the last several years, my playing for me is I'm way more happy playing guitar bits around vocal lines than I am playing solos. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's just kind of where I live now. And it's really fun for me to see if I can come up with a ridiculous amount of guitar around a vocal line without getting in the way of the guitar. Yeah. And then maybe just strip it back a bit. But no, it helps with your rhythm and your groove and everything. There's so much information out there for players. And I was thinking about this too, which I think is pretty interesting, is I think it's a great time to be a guitar player now because there's so much stuff available. But I think there's also some downsides to that makes it frustrating for a lot of new guitar players. Because just think about that. You're trying to work your instrument out. I mean, think back 1,000 years when we started, and you're getting one, and every video has a 13-year-old kid like nailing Eruption. So it's like completely overwhelming. And everything is so focused on, like soloing or like the blues, like soloing and stuff. So you kind of it's just like rut-based guitar, it's just all points there. And instead of doing another video of you like nailing the solo to comfortably numb, maybe think about the guitar in a different, for me anyways, it works. It's just like kind of like soloing is great and I can come up with a solo if I need to, but I'm just like really into like what a guitar can do, if it's treated like a saxophone or a piano or something like, some other instrument in the context of a song. And then that way, I mean, it's just more fun to make music. So I know I rambled on, so I'm going to turn it over to you and you tell us what you do now.
Yeah, that's totally cool. And I kind of do that too. One thing I've done in the last couple of years is taken classical guitar lessons because I'm so used to playing electric guitar and certain types of guitar and I've always loved classical guitar, and I've always wanted, I've always dabbled in it here and there. But in the last several years, I've tried to really apply myself to it just so I can see how far I can get. And so that's one way I've kind of tried to get my mind out of the rut I've been in terms of, the fretboard and coming to the guitar and playing the same goddamn chord every time I pick up a guitar. And it's been really cool. It's been really fun. And I'm learning to read music, and that's another thing too, is I want to be able to read music so that I can pick up some sheet music and play some song that I want to play. Or, I mean, you and I both learn by ear, which is cool too, but I think it'd be cool to just pick up a piece of sheet music and play a song that I want to play and know what I'm looking at for the most part. I mean, I don't want to become, not that I don't want to become, but it's not, my aim isn't to become a really learned, music reader or anything like that. But so that's one way I've kind of gotten out of my rut, is trying to play classical guitar. And then other things, you and I kind of went down the mandolin rabbit hole too, which was cool, because that's a totally different mindset than guitar. When you and I were kind of in our bluegrass phase a while ago.
Yeah, the bluegrass years.
Yeah, and so you and I were playing acoustic guitar, and then we both got mandolins, and I got to revisit that actually, because I think that's a cool thing to visit another instrument that's not the guitar, that makes you think about things differently. And then I do get inspired when I play the mandolin and then want to go back to guitar. But I think there's a lot to what you're saying about putting the guitar down and listen to music. I mean, I know as a guitar player, I've gone in the same journey, where when I was young, I was enticed by flashy, shiny objects. And so, leads were the big thing. But over time, I've just come to really appreciate what good rhythm guitar players do, like Mike Campbell or like you're talking about George Harrison, and just listening to those songs and listening to what they're doing in terms of accompanying the music or the singer, and then also just being a player within the band and doing tasty stuff to enhance the music. Yeah, those are some of the things I've done too. What else have you done, or what else do you think about when you're in a rut playing guitar?
Well, for me lately, I've been really interested in being a little bit smarter, like knowledgeable about, some of the theory, mostly for just chords, like building cool, interesting chord progressions. I've been so long learning by ear and just by, doing it, that a lot of the tools that they have in place for people just seem really ridiculously overcomplicated. And they don't make any sense to me. For me, the important thing that's helping me, I'm kind of have to at this point absorb the theory and then roll it into the way that I understand the fretboard, because I just learned from a different way. I learned that there's patterns, so I just learned to look for patterns and use my ear to hear things and associate those with shapes. And yeah, of course, I learned the major scale and the major and minor pentatonic scales. And when I first started, I was kind of focused on those. So everything sounded like, that boxy, blues noodling. But after a while, I kept that kind of that pattern association with, sounds and things like that. So I learned more of the neck on where certain things live and how to get there. And I can know, I can kind of hear what part of the neck is going to sound like as I'm playing. If I go up there, I'll get that kind of sound. So that's kind of the way that I learned. So a lot of this theory, while it's interesting, sometimes it's really frustrating, because it just seems like they made things really, really complicated, like seventh chords, major sevenths, and all this. It's just, they throw numbers in, and people who use numbers differently. It's I know where the 1, 4, 5 and the 6, the relative minor and that stuff is. And I've known for years, even though I didn't know what they were, but I know what they did and what kind of sounds they made. So I've used them. So it's kind of interesting to be pulling in the theory, but I don't want to be Mr. Smarty Pants music wise. I mean, I've seen videos of people I really admire that are super smarty pants, and watch them just take all the joy out of a fucking song or a solo or something by just over analyzing it to shit. I'm I know that guitar player from listening to his music and reading interviews with him. He wasn't thinking like you're talking about his solo. You know what I mean? And you are being a smarty pants music person and very confident on the fretboard will never develop a solo like he did, because you can't think like he does. It's kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's interesting from that standpoint, but mostly just learning about, chords and the way chords go together, and finding these little things that fit in my pattern-based learning. I learned where to have a seventh chord just before a resolving chord, like the pattern where it lives in. So now anytime I want to resolve with, making a little nice 7 to the end chord, I know where to do that. And I kind of played around with a circle of fifths, which is really fascinating, and like learned about, the songs that use that and some things that I could use that for. But then again, it's really frustrating because it's like the circle of fifths, right? You go clockwise around and everything is a perfect fifth apart. But if you go counterclockwise, it's fucking a fourth apart. And then it's some of the songs that are called perfect fifth, are the circle of fifths are going backwards. So they're going in four. So you're like, what the fuck is going on? But as soon as I saw the patterns as they applied to the fretboard, I'm like, cool, I understand. I mean, I would recommend anybody that's trying to absorb the circle of fifths. The first thing to do to just get a really good idea of what's going on is just use bar chords and just,
exactly.
And start like up the neck and go clockwise and see what they're doing on the fretboard, and then go counterclockwise and see what's happening on the fretboard. You're like, oh, I get it. And then you'll start to see all the songs that will use that. So just little, I've been really kind of into just getting a little bit smarter about stuff, just to be able to come up with cooler chord progressions and things like that. And, know associations of notes when you're trying to put melody parts or solos together and stuff like that. So, if someone is stuck and they've been doing the same thing over and over, it might even be as simple as just saying, oh, I just always go to this part of the neck and I play this little thing, work it out somewhere else on the neck. And then just like listen to that sound and then just kind of like know that pattern. I mean, there's so many times I was completely convinced that, I just made up this really cool chord. No, this chord doesn't even exist. It always exists. Every chord. And that's the other thing that's frustrating. Some chords are like almost identical, but they have different names. I mean, you can leave it, if there's like one note that makes it different. And I don't know. Sometimes I think that the people who made up music were just kind of threw a bunch of stuff in there to make it more difficult, so it would be as legitimate as like science or math or something like that. But that's cool. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about being in ruts.
Yep.
That's what helps. But I mean, for me anymore, whenever I'm stuck, I'm just going to say, all right, I'm putting this guitar down and I'm going to put on some records and listen to them for the time that I would have played guitar. And maybe I'll only make it halfway, and then I'll have to go play guitar because I'll get inspired.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that too, actually, of putting it down. Because I've realized that too with making progress on classical guitar, where I feel frustrated that I feel like I'm plateauing at a certain level, and then I just put it away, and then I pick it up and I'm like, oh, okay, it is getting into my brain and my fingers, And so I think perspective is huge that way, in terms of like stepping away from it for a little bit and then coming back to it, and it can be both inspirational and then also kind of let you know that, hey, you are getting somewhere, you're proficient, you can play. And then, because I've noticed that a ton with playing classical, but also like you mentioned, it is a great time to be a guitar player, because you're right. There's a torrent of videos out there, and a lot of them, there's good and bad, but I'll plug a couple that you and I have talked about before, or maybe one of at least is Tom Bukovac, Nashville guitarist, who's just amazing. He's an amazing player. And you turned me on to him during the pandemic because he started doing these series of videos out of his garage during the pandemic because nobody could work. But I would recommend watching him and absorbing what his guitar playing and his little pieces of advice for any guitar player, because he's just one of those great guitar players that is totally musical, and he's into chords, and he's heavily influenced by prog, which I thought was really cool and interesting about that guy. But right. And then also there's another guy that I love is Tuck Andrus of Tuck and Patty, and he did a similar thing where he did Tuck's tips during the pandemic, and I tuned into him, and he basically broke down his style, I mean, in basic terms, which is super cool. And he's like this amazing jazz fingerstyle player who has years and years of experience. And so I really got inspired by just watching those two guys, their series of videos. And that really inspired me in terms of trying to go figure things out in a different way. What were you going to say, Chris?
Oh, I was going to say the good thing about Tom Bukovac is it's not just like lessons. You know what I mean? It's just
right.
Like guitar playing to me is so much more than just being about, like playing the guitar. I mean, I don't know. It's a way of life, and there's just like a vibe to it. And so many different things can inspire you. And sometimes, it's not just somebody showing you how to work out a solo or something like that, or telling you about bits of theory. It's just about a vibe and just like stories and stuff. And, I don't know.
Yeah.
He has a good vibe, and it kind of makes you want to play guitar. So, I mean, the other thing is too, is, I mean, it probably helps somebody just starting out too, is just like realize that, I mean, there are so many like 14-year-olds that can nail eruption, and maybe let somebody else do that. Find something else, find your own thing. And that was a big deal to me, like really kind of an awakening. I'd be listening to somebody that's playing slide guitar, and I'm like, I gotta work on my slide. And I would play slide, and it was kind of passable. It's like, I'm never going to be that good. Or, here's somebody playing really hot country guitar. I was in a country rock band, and I kind of faked it, but I kind of came up with a style. I realized that I really, really want to be the kind of chicken picking guitar player. I have to learn to play with my fingers and do all this other stuff. And I don't, it's not really the kind of guitar player I want to be. I want to be like a Stonesy kind of like more of a hybrid kind of style. I love the country sound. I'm going to take these elements of like pedal steel bass country guitar, but just roll them in with my rock style and find something else to do, to kind of make my mark with, or, make something that's mine. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And to your point, seeing all these other players, and I'm the same way. Like sometimes I would get intimidated, or I'd go, Jesus, I've been playing for that how long? And this person's been playing and they're doing this amazing stuff. But exactly, it's all about individuality. It's all about, focus on what you want to do, or what's within your wheelhouse. But and try to get inspired rather than intimidated by seeing all these crazy talented people online. Because I went through that too. And then exactly, I just said, well, screw it. I mean, I have my preferences in terms of genres or styles, and I'm just going to keep kind of edging towards that. But it's funny you mentioned slide too. I've been playing a little bit of slide just because there's a little slide in some of these U2 songs. And I've gotten better over time just by playing these two songs that have slide. You know what I mean? So
yeah, no, it actually works.
Yeah. And that's another thing to realize, is that if you just apply yourself a little bit to something over time, you'll see great improvement. Because like at the beginning of it, I was like, shit, I can't play slide. It's like, but these songs have slide in it. So I had to play it, and I had to figure out a way to make it work. And I'm doing it. And it's kind of cool because, slide to me too has been kind of this elusive thing in my guitar playing, but I'm starting to feel more comfortable with it and get better at it. And so that's kind of been a pleasant surprise in terms of that. So
it's funny how that works. You stick with something in practice and you get better. No, that's true. I've gotten kind of less patient over it. I always come around to the fact, well, okay, here I go. I'm pretty confident on this. If I want to get really good, I could put all this time into it. But it's like, I could go and put it back into my guitar playing, and so I always go back to the guitar playing. There's probably part of it that's a little bit of like comfort, like, well, I know I'm more confident at this, but at the same time, I don't know. It's interesting, but it is good to hear that it does, that stuff does work. We should remember that stuff does. So any level of frustration that you're feeling with your playing for whatever, it's like you will get beyond it.
Totally. And again, like for me, I mean, I'm in a comfort zone with my guitar, with my playing. It's comfy. I mean, I've been playing this same way for so many years. And exactly, when I try something new, it's really frustrating. And then I'll abandon it because I'm not as proficient as I am playing my other style that I've been playing. But so that's another thing I think that I would make people aware of, is that you're going to suck. Like if you want to try to do something different, like slide, you've never played slide, or you play open tunings or whatever, you're going to suck at the beginning. But if you stick with it, you will get better and you will improve. And, it might inspire you and just expand your guitar playing overall and roll it into your own style. And so, yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised about just trying little things and then over time going, oh yeah, I've gotten better at that, so it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to do that. But I think you're right too, listening to music, man. And I've been listening to music so differently as I've gotten older. I really I think I was telling you, I was listening to a Neil Young song, and I was listening to it with headphones, and I'm hearing these little guitar parts that I've never noticed in my life ever. And you wouldn't notice them just listening to the radio, but you put headphones on and you hear these little, and they're nothing special, but it adds to the song. And it's just these little notes or this little strum. So that's another thing that I've been inspired by, guitar wise and everything else, is listening to music differently than you normally do, maybe with more, not scrutiny, but listening to it more carefully, and listening, like you're saying, listening to what everybody's doing, not just the guitar player, but the bass player and the drummer. And that will influence you as a musician, just hearing how a band crafts their sound to play to the song.
It's the way all that stuff works. I mean, it's great to have one of those days, which I've had very recently, is where it's like Saturday, you get all your chores done, everything is cool. And then Sunday, you got a block of the day that you're going to just assign to, playing guitar, and being there at night and just being really excited about, that's great. I've got an amp set up in the living room. I'm going to play guitar for, 3 or 4 hours tomorrow. That's what I'm going to do, and have that excitement. And that's a really great thing to have. So
that's awesome.
And, that's kind of the opposite of being stuck, but being stuck.
No, but I mean, that's another good point. It's like try to block out time to play guitar, and then also try to approach your gear differently. Try to get different tones out of the gear you have, and so maybe there's some way for you to get inspired sonically. You know what I mean? Not just playing or anything, but sonically. Because I'm the same way with gear. I mean, I get into a rut with gear, right? It's like, okay, this is my sound. I've got, my knobs are all set, and but we all know that if you mess with the tone knobs on your guitar, you're going to get different sounds. And same with your amp, same with your pedals, or dig a pedal out that you haven't tried in a long time. I mean, it was a revelation when I started buying phasers, when you and I were on, I was going through that pedal kick and getting that vintage phaser, that Electro-Harmonix phaser. It was a revelation. It's so cool. So that's another thing, is just getting inspired by your gear itself. And you don't have to go out and buy new gear, but most guitarists have a couple guitars and some pedals and an amp or two. And so just approach that differently and see what inspires you sonically,
Right.
I think that's kind of a cool idea.
Indeed.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for listening as always. And check us out on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcasts, man. And we've got some cool interviews coming up that Chris and I are going to do. And also just all other topics that we're going to discuss too. But keep listening. We appreciate you guys listening. And we love doing this. So we're going to keep it up. What do you got to say, Chris?
Thanks for listening, and play lots of guitar.